Donc, merci encore une fois à vous trois pour votre collaboration et votre soutien à cette journée. Alors, j'espère que vous êtes maintenant prêts. Le moment est venu de vous présenter notre première conférencière. On a l'honneur d'accueillir une invitée du Royaume-Uni qui est avec nous en ligne, j'espère. Jenny Poppé, qui est professeure émérite de sociologie et de santé publique à l'Université de Lancaster. Elle est fellow de l'Academy of Social Sciences du Royaume-Uni. Elle a reçu le prix pour service distingué de la British Sociology Association en 2022. Elle est co-responsable d'un important programme de recherche sur les inégalités de santé au School for Public Health Research, qui fait partie du National Institute for Health and Care Research. Ses recherches portent notamment sur les déterminants sociaux de l'équité en matière de santé et l'évaluation des interventions et des politiques basées sur la communauté. Sa présentation est intitulée « Approches communautaires en santé publique, parlons de pouvoir plutôt que d'actifs ». Jenny?
Hello, I hope you can hear me okay.
Welcome. Yes, we do. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
I'm going to share my screen, but first, thank you very much for asking me to speak today, and thanks for the challenge. 10 minutes to present my ideas is very challenging for me, so fingers crossed. Let me just... Okay, so I hope you can see the slides. I want to talk about health inequalities, which I believe are the most profound challenge facing public health practice and research today. The image on the top right of this slide shows the gradient that you will all be very familiar with. In this case, it's life expectancy by per capita income in all the countries of the world. And as you would expect, as with almost all measures of health and outcomes, the poorest countries have the lowest life expectancy, going up to the wealthiest countries with the longest life expectancy. And the key thing about these inequities is that they can be changed by policy. So they're a choice that societies make. And because of that, the WHO Commission on the Social Determinants of Health, in their final report, which is the front page is shown here, concluded that they are a matter of social justice. So what then would a social justice approach to public health research and practice look like? Well, I think there are two key issues here. The first is that a social justice approach would address the fundamental causes of these inequities. And for me, these fundamental causes are different from social determinants, which I know we're all talking about now, and commercial determinants. These fundamental causes underpin those determinants. And I think there are three elements to that. The first is that a social justice approach would focus on capabilities. This is, of course, a Sen's notion. This image, top right, is of a book by Martha Nussbaum, who is a wonderful philosopher who talks about this in more detail. But simply put, capabilities are the ability people have to achieve their desired outcomes. In this case, I would say it's institutions and practitioners in public health having the capabilities to achieve progressive social change and to enable the people and communities they work with to do that. The second element is the resources that are needed to maximize the development and operationalization of capabilities. And the resources obviously include money, they include time, they include knowledge, and many aspects of that. And then the third aspect of the fundamental causes is power. Now, power is different from capabilities. Capabilities are characteristics of institutions and individuals. Power is a capability. It's the ability, though, to influence the decisions and actions of others. So if public health addressed the fundamental causes, that would be a social justice approach. And in doing that, it would be a powerful global voice for equity. So what do I think, how close do I think today's public health research and practice is to this aspiration? Well, in contrast, and I exaggerate, I know, for impact, but I believe that much of today's public health is obsessed with three things. On the left-hand side of my screen, lifestyles. You know, the other ubiquitous motive of public health, certainly in the countries that I've been, is the bicycle. I've got over 100 images of bicycle, but all of them, like this one, are presenting a message about lifestyle and behavior change. This one, the apple and the heart, others have got bananas as handlebars, etc. Whatever it is, this is as ubiquitous as the gradient. The second obsession of contemporary public health, I think, is encapsulated in the title of this quite popular book, Building Communities from the Inside Out, a path towards finding and mobilizing a community's assets. So we're focusing too much on community assets and an inward gaze on the dynamics of communities rather than an outward gaze on the kind of social change we would need for social justice. And then the third obsession of today's public health, I think, is with a narrow understanding of scientific evidence. And the issue for me is that this dominant approach has got significant negative consequences. And here on the left-hand side, probably the most important one is that I think to the extent that this is the dominant approach, we're damaging the most disadvantaged people and groups. And there are three pathways to that damage. The first is under that warning sign, empowerment zone ahead. A lot of public health is with communities and with community activists. This burnout image is from the website of a network of community activists, and they're reporting on the very widespread problem of burnout. But what is less well talked about is the fact that the experience of burnout, the experience of negative consequences for community members who are active in public health, are unequally distributed. So in my own research, evaluating a big empowerment project, women were less likely to report benefits and more likely to report burnout than men. And those with least educational qualifications were more likely to report burnout and less likely to report benefits than those with more qualifications. So the poor of the poorest are benefiting the least. The second pathway is stigma. I think too much of what we do, what we say, the images we use are stigmatizing for the most disadvantaged people and communities. This is a very extreme example. This is an image, bottom screen on the left, of a kind of comic that the Royal Society of Public Health in England commissioned for their 100-year celebration. It is the most stigmatizing image of a poor neighborhood. It's got a very overweight woman feeling unhealthy food to her child on the steps. It's got drunken men coming out of a payday loan office. It's got some very suspicious looking creatures below the steps doing I know not what. But when they were told, they thought we just didn't have a sense of humor. And then the third pathway is illustrated by the Grenfell Tower fire in London in 2017, which killed almost 100 people and traumatized many, many more. The people who lived in that tower were primarily low-income households and migrants. And for 10 years before the tower, they were telling people about the risks that would cause that fire. So if they'd been listened to, it wouldn't have happened. They were ignored. The other risk, I think, the other consequence of this dominant approach in public health is that we risk looking, and even worse, we risk being irrelevant. And that's for two reasons, because where we are now is in a world in which inequalities are growing. The illustrations on the right top are showing life expectancy for women in England between 2010-12 and 2017-19. You can see an obvious north-south divide, and the darker the colours on the right show that that's getting worse. But in every one of those regions, the colours on the right are darker than they are on the left. So inequalities are growing in life expectancy. That's common across many different outcomes. And at the same time, in 2022, the OECD published that report at the bottom, Healthy Eating and Active Lifestyles. And those kinds of reports are being published every day, every week, all around the world, whilst inequalities are growing grossly. So the solution, you'd expect me to say, I think it's a social justice-centred approach. And I have identified here 5 elements to that approach. I think this is an agenda for institutions and for individuals. The first issue is that we need to be mainstreaming a strong equity lens. That image there on the top left is the website that we've produced for a resource called For Equity, which is to help researchers embed a stronger equity lens. But there are other resources for institutions, policymakers, practitioners. The bottom image, also on the left, is the idea of the importance of shifting from asset mapping and mobilizing to power analysis and resistance. And that's the Power Cube website, which has got amazing resources for institutions and people that want to integrate a power analysis. The central image is a wonderful piece by one of our famous street artists, Banksy, which is pointing to the critical importance of social justice-centred public health, resisting lifestyle drift and acting on the fundamental causes. Then on the right, I think that this paper, published in 1989, is a powerful example of what happens if we integrate lay knowledge into our evidence base. Here, the story, quickly, 10 minutes, is that a group of women went to public health in Glasgow and complained that the mold, the damp mold in their houses was causing respiratory problems in their children. They were told, no, it's not that, it's your smoking. So they went to these researchers, Steve Platt and colleagues at Edinburgh, and they studied this relationship. This paper reports their findings in the BMJ, and they found the women were right. There was a dose-response relationship between mold and children's respiratory problem, and no relationship with smoking. And then the final image here is a really interesting book, but there are many, about how we might strengthen advocacy, institutional advocacy and individual advocacy, based on our lived experience of working with communities and groups for more social justice. So my final, I'm not sure whether I've gone over my time, but my final slide is, I recognise that I'm exaggerating a little to provoke, and I do know that there are examples of work where a social justice approach is embedded, even if it's not labelled in that way. So just some examples, I'm sure you will have others. The first, on the left, are two examples of what I believe are new approaches to addressing fundamental causes. The top is a report from Preston, a town in the northwest of England, where they're building a community wealth initiative. So the local government, including public health, the National Health Service, and private agencies are coming together to invest in their local area in a more equitable way. The bottom is a web page from the Centre for Population Health in Glasgow, where they have a resource for institutions and individuals that want to integrate a power analysis. In the middle are examples of more progressive global public health voices that don't talk so much about lifestyle. The People's Health Movement, powerful movement, been going 2 decades. Most members are in low-income countries. We should all be a member of that movement. And the bottom is a network for academic public health, which on their website at least were advocating for climate justice and also for poverty to be seen as a major public health issue alongside tobacco and gambling, etc. And then on the right-hand side, I think there are examples here of where lay knowledge is being taken more seriously. So the top is the landing page of a website called Changing Realities, and that started in COVID. It's a collaboration between researchers, public health practitioners, and women bringing their children up in poverty. The women are telling their stories. They're thinking of innovative ways of disseminating, and those stories are now having an impact across the policy action landscape in the UK. And then the bottom is a recent paper by researchers who are exploring how you can integrate lay knowledge with scientific knowledge to improve early warning systems for risk reduction. So there are examples of progressive social justice focused public health. The challenge for all of us is how we can make those exceptions the rule. How do we make these aspirational examples into the way we do things around here? So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Alors, we've had apparently a small technical issue where people online before we started the conferences were not hearing what I said. So I'm just going to give them a quick message. Donc, pour les gens en ligne, j'espère que vous m'entendez maintenant. Ce que j'ai dit avant le début des conférences, c'est qu'on avait quelques minutes pour des questions après chacune et on souhaitait surtout vous laisser la place, étant donné que c'est votre seule occasion d'interagir avec les conférenciers. Donc, si vous avez des questions que vous aimeriez soumettre, on vous invite à les inscrire dans le module questions et réponses en ligne. Et on a quelqu'un ici dans la salle qui va pouvoir les relayer aux conférenciers. Cela étant dit, pour notre première conférencière, j'aimerais vous inviter dans la salle parce qu'en ligne, personne n'a encore... en fait, comprenez, il ne le savait pas. Donc, j'aimerais vous inviter, vous, dans la salle, si vous avez une ou deux questions pour notre conférencière que vous souhaiteriez lui adresser. Est-ce que quelqu'un d'assez brave pour... On a un micro, assez brave pour prendre le micro. OK. Une dernière chance? Non?
I'll ask a question here. I'm hidden behind a post here, but I will ask the questions about the practical implications of what you're saying and how public health organizations responsible for the health of given populations or territories can actually start putting in place measures, partnerships that will achieve the goals that you're talking about.
Did you understand that clearly?
I did. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
I'm not sure what happens if I turn the translation off, but I will have a go. I think this is a culture change issue at the institutional level, maybe at the practitioner level as well, but it's about education and training and everything. But I think organizationally, it's a culture change issue. And I think, for example, we need to do the same kind of thing as happened when asset-based community development moved into public health and became really embedded. So that would be an example for me of how do we move power analysis into public health and get it embedded. Well, we do that in the same way as people are trying to mainstream gender equity in organization. There's a lot of good stuff on how one mainstreams, how you can begin to mainstream. But I think there is a big issue for our leaders in public health to stop thinking first about lifestyle and behavior and to start thinking first about these fundamental causes. It doesn't mean we can't think about lifestyle. It's the ordering of those two things, really, that I think is the problem. So it is a leadership issue, but it's a culture change issue as well. And I think there's lots out there that can help us make it very practical about how you mainstream a social justice approach to public health. In research institutions as well. I mean, I have done a very quick and not very clean review of public health research, and there are so many papers out there that don't even look at distributional impacts, you know? So we've got a major problem in my own community as well as in the practitioner community.
Thank you, Jenny. Est-ce que quelqu'un d'autre aurait une question? On a peut-être le temps pour une dernière. Ah, on a une question en ligne.
Donc, c'est pas vraiment une question, c'est quelqu'un qui félicite la présentatrice et qui demande que ce serait profitable d'avoir accès à tous les sites qui donnent les solutions pour une meilleure justice sociale, une meilleure approche de la justice sociale.
Were you able to get that? So
yes,
congratulations.
and I'm very happy for my slides to be distributed. What I could do also is add some references because I've not done that. So I can do that and send you a revised version with the full list of websites and things like that.
Thank you so much. Je pense que j'ai eu l'occasion de discuter avec Jenny plus tôt cette semaine. Je pense qu'au Québec, on a peut-être déjà une certaine longueur d'avance en matière de notre prise en compte d'une anti-équité dans tout ce que nous faisons en santé publique, mais comme on se le dit, on a encore certainement plus qu'on est capable de faire. Donc, on va, je crois... So, thank you, Jenny. You're, of course, more than welcome to stay with us for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you for your short and very enlightening presentation. That's definitely food for thought for our ongoing efforts.